Hello, I'm Charlie Brooker and you're watching Newswipe, a programme all about things that have been happening. Things like this. Islam will dominate the world, screams piece of paper held aloft behind small recently banned group in the snow. Woman watches in nodding amazement as televangelist performs miracle of the talking anus while discussing cause of Haiti disaster.
They got together and swore a pact to the devil. They said, we will serve you if you'll get us free from the French. True story.
Fuck off! And eerie, uncomfortable scenes as Brown uses laptops in bid to lure young voters.
Do you like computers now?
Yeah.
You find them quite good.
But we start, as these things so often do, in a small darkened room. We humans like to think we're more sophisticated than the rest of the animal kingdom just because we know how to operate a fan heater. But in truth, we're still primitive, easily spooked creatures that can't help pricking their ears up at the first hint of danger. Constantly being on the lookout for danger is a basic survival mechanism that's served us jolly well throughout history. In fact, it's why we're all still here. Today, of course, we're not roaming the plains, listening out for lion noises and trying to avoid snakes. We're just flopping around at home, watching telly or reading the paper. But we're still alert to danger. It's just that the news has come to form part of our early warning system. The trouble is that while some things are authentically worrisome, the news has an inherent bias towards the worst-case scenario in every single case. There's little middle register. Scientific projections, for instance, have a wide margin of error. If you're looking at some lurgy, the best-case scenario could be that a mere 300 people could die. Or the worst outcome could be a body count of 300 million. News reports on the lurgy will always focus on that scarier number because it's got more impact. It makes our primitive internal ears prick up. And this sometimes catches people unawares. For instance, recently the nation fought back tears of wet sympathy as Alistair Campbell recounted how shortly after helping to assemble a notoriously cautious and well-researched dossier, he looked on in powerless and surprised horror as the British press inexplicably focused on its scariest figures. Why? Even when the figures aren't in question, the way they're presented ramps up the fear.
The swine flu sweeping around the globe is now in Britain.
The news has long served as a kind of endless conveyor belt, delivering one concern after another directly into your living room. And just like haircuts or shoes, different scares go in and out of fashion. The terrifying spectre of all-out nuclear war was one of the coolest news stories for years, although looking back at coverage from the 80s, what's notable is how emotionless and businesslike it seems considering the stakes.
Britain's doctors say 33 million people in this country may be killed and injured in a nuclear war.
Well, you've got to admire his inner steel. If I had to deliver news like that to the nation, I'd read it off the autocue through a haze of tears while tying a noose under the desk. The 80s were terrifying all round. When we weren't stocking our nuclear bunkers with bin bags, we rang our mitts over problems such as AIDS, football hooligans, and most sinister of all, eggs.
The 1 o'clock news from the BBC with Philip Hayton.
Good afternoon. The government is introducing new measures to combat salmonella in eggs.
Scrambled eggs, fried eggs, poached eggs. I don't really believe any cooking can render those safe that doesn't destroy the flavour.
So you're telling people to stop eating eggs, really?
That's right.
But fuck eggs and check out this immense threat to civilization. Yes, any youth phenomenon almost automatically becomes a moral panic, and the late 80s provided an absolute humdinger in the form of acid house, which worried many with its lurid dancing and pill-chugging culture. World in Action considered it such a menace they devoted an entire straight-faced episode to uncovering the truth behind this sinister scene, which, as it helpfully pointed out, was receiving measured, cool-headed coverage at the hands of Fleet Street.
Some newspapers have called acid house music a sinister and evil cult which lures young people into drug-taking. The message is certainly getting across.
What do you know about acid house music?
There's meant to be a drugs-related craze. Seems to be the most worrying thing.
And where did you find that out?
That was in the paper.
Do you think it's anything to do with a certain religion, do you think?
No,
is it anything like that?
No, it's more to do with a kind of a drug, isn't it? It's a drug.
Yeah, well, those that take it ought to be ashamed of themselves.
While the public and the media worried about the effects of ecstasy, the users themselves seemed curiously upbeat about the whole thing. Let's hear from a sweaty man and a Wookiee.
I don't think doing an E every couple of weeks is going to be any worse for me than smoking or drinking. Really?
The 90s veered from drugs to bugs as the tabloids seized on a random cluster of cases of necrotising fasciitis, which had been around since the 1800s, and sexily rechristened it the flesh-eating bug, thereby helpfully scaring the shit out of millions. Even people who'd already had it got retrospectively concerned.
He's told me I was a lucky boy in the hospital, but it doesn't really hit home then. Now, reading all this stuff in the newspaper, now it's hit home now, yeah.
The furore was so large it even made headlines in funny foreign countries.
De mysterieuze vleesetende bacterie.
Fears of a flesh-putrefying epidemic quickly died away to be replaced by concern about an epidemic of anger reportedly sweeping Britain's highways, an epidemic known as road rage.
Road rage is that point when a motorist loses control of his or her behaviour, when they actually do go, for a short time, completely mad.
Come on, move forward a bit. I'm supposed to look at this wanker. Are you going to let me out, or what? Fucking hell.
Just a few days ago in Newcastle, another driver had his nose bitten off.
Incredibly, mankind somehow managed to survive road rage and made it all the way through the 90s, only to find itself plunged headlong into a war with the machines on the eve of the millennium.
The fear is that the computer systems that support our lives are far more vulnerable than we ever could have imagined.
The millennium bug was definitely going to kill everyone. Apocalyptic predictions were trumpeted for months. Fear-mongering coverage repeatedly warned us to be on the lookout for plummeting planes and malfunctioning ATMs. Hospitals would explode. Cars would inexplicably transform themselves into grapefruit. Robots would wave their arms around, screaming, "Does not compute," for a while and then rise up and kill. And if that wasn't bad enough, it was a nightmare for corned beef fans.
Marks and Spencer almost destroyed a consignment of corned beef when their computer system mistakenly told them that the tins were decades old.
Come Millennium Eve itself, the BBC nervously wheeled out its big guns to stand in front of a giant rotating globe and see the world get destroyed. But the only thing that really seemed to be affected was Peter Snow's auto cue.
So far, it's cost us about £250 billion to take on the bug. And that's the way it's been. £250 billion it's cost us.
Shortly after the millennium, something genuinely bloody terrifying did happen, making terrorism the most sensational #1 fear in the shit-yourself parade for years. Terrorism, of course, is a story which has received the kind of calm, measured coverage we've come to expect, rivalled only by the rise of the paedophiles. A series of hard-hitting Sky News reports reveals how these characteristically haunted-looking gentlemen have infiltrated virtually every aspect of society. They can be found lurking in schools or hiding under towels in the backs of Australian cars.
He's chased by photographers, chased out of Australia and back to Britain.
They run sophisticated advertising campaigns on trains.
Scrawled on a toilet door was an advert asking for young girls for sex.
They even commit foul made-up crimes in lurid made-up worlds on the internet.
We've uncovered paedophiles acting out sexual encounters with virtual children in the internet world of Second Life.
And when children aren't being endangered by sex beast monster scumbags, they're at threat from virtually everything else. Mobile phone bullying, obesity, knife crime.
They're not afraid to show them to camera and they're not afraid to use them.
What's he going to do with that? Slice up a Hawaiian? With so many horrible things in the world to choose from at any given time, how do news bosses pick which ones to concentrate on? Here's Canadian journalist Dan Gardner, author of Risk, The Science and Politics of Fear, with his view.
The media plays a central role in the development of unreasonable fear. I would not say that the media are doing this deliberately. I think what's fundamentally at work is human nature. Journalists are interested in the sensational story for the same reason audiences are interested in the sensational story. Tornadoes, terrorism, these are great dramatic stories. You can be sure that if anybody is killed by terrorists or tornadoes, it's going to be a major news story. How about diabetes? Asthma? No. That's never a news story. Somebody died of diabetes. I mean, this doesn't make the news ever, right? And yet, in a single year, diabetes will kill more people than tornadoes and terrorism ever will in all of history. That's how skewed media reporting is. In the mid-1990s, in the Western media and in the Western popular culture, there was a lot of talk about killer viruses breaking out of deepest, darkest Africa and sweeping the globe, killing us all. It wasn't just in the news. It was also in suspense novels. It was also in movies. It was something that was being talked about and feared broadly. It was in the culture. then there was an Ebola outbreak in Central Africa. Ebola is a horrible disease, and it killed about 250 people under rather horrible circumstances. The Western media descended on it with bull feed. Then it played out as the outbreaks usually do, and the Western media left, and we forgot about it. A couple of years later, civil war breaks out in the very same regions, 3 million dead, virtually no coverage in the Western media whatsoever. Why not? Because it didn't fit any existing Western storyline. It didn't fit any Western self-interest. It didn't feel like a threat to us, and so we didn't pay any attention. So you have this spectacular disparity between an enormous amount of attention given to an outbreak that killed 250 people versus a civil war that killed millions and was virtually ignored. The media follow established narratives. Once there is a storyline, an arc, arcing through the media like to pick up on it and continue with it. Terrorism is a great demonstration of the power of the media narrative to shape how the media portrays events. In 1995, Timothy McVeigh, who was a white, anti-government, right-wing radical, detonates a terrible bomb in Oklahoma City, killing many people, and that becomes the paradigm of terrorism. The terrorism story, the terrorism narrative throughout the late 1990s is that of militias, of angry right-wingers, of anti-government radicals. Well, then, of course, 9/11 happens. Now the narrative, of course, is it's Islamic radicals. That's what terrorism is. Then, of course, we all then rush out and go looking for facts and figures that support and advance that media narrative. Well, in 2005, in Oklahoma City, of all places, a man named Joel Henry Hinrichs detonates himself outside a football stadium. Well, this is a suicide bombing in Oklahoma City, and it was not reported around the world. If Joel Henry Hinrichs had blown himself up in the late 1990s, that absolutely would have been widely reported. He not only would have been national news, he would have been international news, and everybody around the planet would have known his name. But his name was Joel Henry Hinrichs. It wasn't Muhammad. He didn't fit the narrative, and so he was ignored.
Every news network in the world got just what it wanted for Christmas this year. Something new to be scared of, specifically underwear. The drama began on Christmas Day when a man wearing the world's least amusing pair of novelty underpants boarded a plane bound for Detroit. As it descended for landing, he tried to detonate something by injecting a syringe into his thigh, a bit like Pete Doherty. Luckily for the other passengers and his nuts, it didn't work. The news obediently sprang into action and speedily descended on Detroit Airport like a load of planes or something. Exterior cameras recorded endless thrilling scenes of the plane grounded behind chicken wire and mountaineers scaling the boarding steps, while indoors, reporters scrambled around trying to find interesting eyewitnesses to interview. ITN found a woman who described his behaviour in terms which sounded a bit like a review of every Keanu Reeves performance ever.
It was completely unemotional. There was absolutely just a blank face. There was no recognition of anything occurring. When you looked at him, it just seemed as if he wasn't there, emotionally.
America's Fox 2 dispatched possibly the world's most histrionic reporter to stand around on the scene being outraged.
Quite frankly, the details are chilling, and it's very scary to think what could have happened to so many innocent people if his plan to kill would have worked.
It's almost as horrifying to think how melodramatic you'd be if it had.
How did this happen? How did this man beat security? How is a man that is on a do-not-fly list able to get on a plane?
Well, I don't know, shouty hat, you're the journalist, go and find out. To be fair, Shrieky Guts was right. There were many unanswered questions about the perpetrator. The first being, how do you pronounce his name? Fox made an early bid for Abdul Mudalla.
The man, the menace, 23-year-old Abdul Mudalla of Nigeria.
But his name quickly grew to be both longer and a more daunting auto-cue challenge than that.
Terror suspect Umar Abdul Muttalib has
They've added an Umar to the front of his name.
It was just hours ago that Umar Farooq Abdul Muttalib had...
Oh, she's just added a Farooq. I hope they've got an expert they could call on to help them deal with pronouncing all these exotic-sounding names.
Nigerian journalist Kemi Omololu Olunloyo joins us. Kemi, tell me what you can about this
man.
Before long, Captain allegedly Thunderpants was being profiled as though he was the subject of an E! True Life Stories special.
How did Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalab get so close to blowing up an airliner?
And what can we tell from browsing through his Facebook photos? Was he always into leaves? How much did he pay for this woolly hat? One of the main things the news wanted to know is where he'd been radicalised, as though a change in your belief system is something you somehow catch instantly in one location, like a stomach bug. Reporters diligently tracked down his past friends and mentors to ask whether he'd ever done anything to suggest he might one day try to blast his bollocks apart on a plane.
Mike Rimmer taught him history in West Africa and says he seemed supportive of the Taliban in class discussions.
Umar actually thought that their ideas were the correct interpretation of Islam. But I thought maybe, in the class discussions, maybe he was just sort of playing devil's advocate to sort of keep the discussion going.
Oh, right, well, maybe this whole thing's just a big icebreaker. We also got to look around the street where Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalab grew up.
The Abdul Muttalab family asked us not to film their house, and we respected their wish.
That's quite considerate of the BBC. I wonder if ITN will be similarly respectful.
Outside the home where the man who tried to blow up Flight 253 grew up.
Still, ITN didn't just film his parents' home, they also filmed their second home.
Omar Farouk's father and other members of the family are now at their second home in Abuja, another large and sprawling house with a domed mosque in the grounds.
What are you going to do next? Show us his primary school?
Farouk attended the Essence International School for his primary education. Even at this young age, he rarely mingled.
Perhaps most intrusive of all, we also got to peer at his underwear, which, to be honest, looked considerably cleaner than I was expecting. The unusual methodology was another gift for the news because it meant it could fill hours debating the proposed changes to airline security, complete with saucy footage of the much-vaunted full-body scanner. The body scanner's raunchiness seemed to vary depending on whose footage you were watching. For instance, in this stimulating sequence it looked downright titillating, whereas at other times it'd only be arousing if you were into chubby blue ghost porn. Mind you, sometimes the body scanner didn't look sophisticated at all. More like a Fisher-Price Cyberman detector. Anyway, back to the suspect and his other great gift to the news networks, making Yemen interesting. Most veteran current affairs junkies already knew Yemen was likely to be the next front in the war on terror, but those are hardcore news fans. If you think of Yemen as an indie band, then the Pants Bomber story marks the moment where it had a breakthrough hit and went mainstream.
A lot of people are suddenly learning about Yemen for the first time.
The news now had an attention-grabbing narrative hook to get the casual viewer interested in the previously boring land of Yemen, a nation apparently twinned with the film Life of Brian. It reacted by running urgent info-packed mini-seminars on this newfound threat as though the viewer was the president in an episode of 24 receiving a critical security briefing. It was almost as if the entire Yemeni nation had been wished into being overnight. The news had a whole new land of fear and chaos. Jihadistan, Afghanistan too, Al-Qaeda on sea. Thing is, Yemen wasn't just new to many viewers, but many reporters too.
It's across the way they're selling portraits of Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein's good, he's poised.
Without much footage of their own from outside the capital, news networks relied heavily on images uploaded by Al-Qaeda themselves, and this can ramp up the fear factor considerably, as Al Jazeera soberly pointed out.
Most intelligence officials say there were only a few hundred active members in Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. So these videos act as almost like a force multiplier. They allow the group to portray itself as being much larger and much more influential than it actually is. So they're happy to get these images out there.
In short, it looks like 2010 might be Yemen's year in the spotlight. It's the next big chapter in the news' favourite ongoing horror story. Don't have nightmares. Obviously, there's nothing funny whatsoever about a man trying to blow up a plane, but there might be something poetic in it. Here's award-winning poet and shambles Tim Key.
The bad gentleman put some powder in his knickers and shuffled through security. Once in his seat, the bad gentleman watched a film. It was the one about Edith Piaf. It was a bad film. But he couldn't really get into it because it had subtitles and because he kept on thinking about the fact that he had to blow his dick up. Then he speculated how angry the gaffer would be if he came home without an exploded plane load of Westerners. In the end, he made a half-hearted attempt to make the plane go bang. But he screamed when his knob caught fire. And the brave Westerners jumped on him and twisted his arms behind his back. and extinguished his privates. Well, when he landed, everyone treated him like shit. And it was excruciating when he did a piss. And he felt like a right plum. That was the big Christmas. The one that was a story they brought out at Christmas this year.
In any given week, there are big stories, there are little stories, and then there's this sort of thing. This is the week in bullshit.
To you and me, it's simply a dip that goes well with pita bread. For the delicate relations in the Middle East, though, hummus might just be the perfect ingredient to bring people together.
Yes, 5 News diligently covered a valiant and uplifting attempt to bring peace to the Middle East as a community of Arabs and Jews work together as one to break the world record for the biggest dish of hummus ever.
4,090 kilograms of hummus.
The success of the bid will hopefully herald an era of 1,000 years of peace, which is about how long it will take them to eat all that stuff. Next week, solving climate change with Tara Masalata. Now here's American comic and alienated drunk Doug Stanhope with his view on fear in the US news media.
I'm Doug Stanhope, and that's why I drink. What is it that you're so afraid of, anyway? It's no secret to anybody that the news is just a constant battering ram of fear-mongering. If you want to be terrified, there's never-ending coverage that can make you scared shitless. Juvenile heart attacks. Could it be your child? Is someone masturbating in your sandwich at the local diner? You might not think so, but this horror movie graphic will change your mind. Can you get pig flu from pork chops? No. The calls are coming from inside the house!
Shots fired. Shots fired. 207.
You must get out of the house! Where's your teen right now? Probably getting the shit kicked out of him.
You make me so pissed.
People tend to blame the news as though it's their fault for spreading all this fear, as though there's no market for it. You can't blame the news for making you afraid any more than you would blame horror movies or haunted houses. That's what people are buying into. And the reason that people are buying fear so easily and stockpiling it is you'd much rather believe all that bullshit that, immigrants are trying to take your job and pedophiles are trying to fuck your kids and terrorists are coming to blow up your Ford Focus in particular. That's far more palatable for people to buy than to accept the reality, which is that probably a statistical high Vegas odds probability is that nothing of any significance will ever happen to you in your entire boring life. You're not going to win the lottery. You're not going to get caught in gang violence or school shootings. You're not going to get date raped. I know you put a napkin over your glass when you go out to have a cigarette so no one slips something in there and fucks you later. Wasn't going to happen anyway. Nothing's going to happen to you. You'll fall in love. They'll break your heart. Later on in life, you'll settle for less. They're not so much of a looker, not real high on the personality scale, but they're stable. You can make a family with them, and you'll push out rotten kids, and you'll get some awful job. You'll give up your dreams and sit in a cubicle. Maybe in your 50s, they'll find some lump in the back of your neck that they have to just cut out, and your daughter flies home from college in the Dakotas to be there by your side. But by then, they found out it's benign. It's an outpatient procedure that you'll still bring up every Christmas dinner like it was some near-death experience. Before you carve the turkey, Mary, I just want to say, after my little scare with the neck thing, it made me reevaluate my entire life. And now I realize how much my family means to me. And just to have you all here, I know I get choked up every time I talk about this. Nothing ever happened to you. Stop milking it. Nothing ever happened in your whole boring life. So shut up, flip on the news, and carve the fucking turkey.
Don't know if you noticed, but we had a bit of weather recently. Temperatures across the land plunged to Hollyoaks IQ level, and Nick Griffin's dream of an all-white Britain was finally realised. The rolling networks covered it in much the same way they'd cover an alien invasion. They rapidly dispatched journalists to all 18 corners of the nation, where they stood around looking cold and uncomfortable, a bit like hungry homeless people forlornly staring through the window of an upmarket restaurant at diners sitting indoors in the warmth. You could be forgiven for thinking that snow was a brand new, never-before-seen phenomenon. Sky helpfully explained where it came from for the benefit of Dimbo-Dumbos.
To have snow, the layers of the atmosphere below cloud level must be cold enough to keep the flakes from melting.
We were also shown that snow is a cold, white, watery powder which can, in large quantities, render roads impassable and make pavements more slippery than usual. Mainly, though, we learned that snow is a disloyal, deceitful substance responsible for causing conditions that can only be described as treacherous.
Treacherous conditions on the roads as even tractors battle with the ice.
The few cars that did brave it, the going was treacherous.
Minor roads continue to be treacherous ice.
Although it turned out snow wasn't the only thing capable of treachery when there was a brief distraction in the middle of the blizzard in the form of an attempted political coup. Since most of Sky's other reporters were standing around the country gawping at snowflakes, Kay Burley herself shot down to Westminster disguised as a pearly queen. But it was a false alarm. Gordon Brown remained in power and a humiliated Jeff Hume had to nod his way through impromptu bollockings from passing backbenchers to embarrassing effect on ITN.
Get on with doing your backbenchers, Joe.
Okay. Good. Having shot to the top of the news agenda, the coup quickly shrank back down. Meanwhile, back in the Kingdom of Narnia, the state of Britain's slippery pavements was providing bulletins with plenty of tittersome you've-been-framed style slapstick.
This spot in Bristol claimed 2 victims in very quick succession.
All they had to do was pop a camera next to an icy bit of pavement, hit record, sit back and let the hilarity commence.
It's still dangerous for Dublin pedestrians.
He's probably in hospital now. Slippery pavements were a huge concern for many journalists as they pandered to some of the moaniest people in Britain.
The pavement should be gritted like the roads. People leave their cars at home because they can't get off their drives and so forth and so on. They must be gritted like the roads.
Last year during a cold snap, the news largely contented itself with showing viewers snowy shenanigans. There was still plenty of that this time, and very charming it was too, but overall the emphasis was firmly on the negative.
More schools are out now the snow puts A-levels and GCSE exams at risk. Record demand for gas and electricity strains supplies and pushes up prices. We explore how much the appalling weather will cost you.
Yes, to the miserable newsmongers, the snowfall was little more than a collection of new things to worry about. They worried whether shopkeepers would run out of bread and pastries.
Last packet of croissants. Just got a few of the bits of normal Kingsmill stuff.
They worried whether their viewers knew how to defrost a frozen pipe.
Basically, once you locate a pipe, just turn the hairdryer on.
They even worried whether baboons could comprehend what was happening.
It's a shame we can't talk to the animals and tell them what all this cold, white stuff is.
No, it isn't. Largely, though, they worried about the supply of grit.
We're in big problems with grit.
They were obsessed with the notion we might run out of grit, thereby killing everyone in Britain. The news went live to every variety of gritting depot you could imagine. There were boring gritting depots, dull gritting depots, tedious gritting depots, underwhelming gritting depots, undermanned gritting depots, manned gritting depots, indoor gritting depots, outdoor gritting depots, murky gritting depots, sexy gritting depots. Everywhere you looked, the news was taking it up the gritter. No wonder they lost all sense of perspective.
With more snow and ice forecast, is Britain sliding toward chaos?
While the reporters stood around looking miserable, concerned and serious, real people were having a laugh. They were frolicking, tumbling, sledging and arsing around in the background, precisely the sort of frivolity Alistair Stewart has no time for.
The bad weather has indeed brought great acts of humanity, but as you just saw, it's also been an excuse for spectacular stupidity.
With its doomy mantra of treacherous conditions, chaotic roads, perilous pavements, arctic winds and plummeting mercury, the news did its melodramatic best to turn the winter wonderland into a story of death from the skies. It was a tale of woe, peril and treachery the general public just weren't buying.
What about this travel chaos, the misery across Britain, snowbound Britain?
Doesn't matter, does it?
Anyway, that's all we've got time for this week. Good night.
Coming up, breaking major scandals and revealing dark secrets, all in the corridors of power. Rory Bremner is joined by Edwina Curry for a look at the perils of a political memoir, as Dear Diary concludes next.